Hello and welcome to Sunshine for Your Life. As you know, I'm doing a special series on the second coming of Jesus, and I'm hoping for all Christians, if they're watching, to really pay close attention to this, because we're getting very, very close to the end of time. And you know, the Bible does say there will come a time when no man can work. In other words, our Christian influence will come to a stop. We won't be able to actively work in the Christian field. But at this point we can, and I think we need to know as much as we can about the second coming, and I want to make it as simple as I can. There are different interpretations, but there's just absolutely no question about the fact that Jesus said he is coming again, and he will. At the proper time, he will come again. So today I've decided to show you some pictures of modern day Israel, starting off with some maps and talking about Israel as a modern day country. What does she play? What role does she play? What about the countries around her? Why are the Arabs and the Jews always getting into trouble with one another? There is a historic base for that. And so I'm going to just go into all of those things today. And we're building up to the process by which Jesus will come again. Remember, for people who don't like Jewish people, but they claim to be Christian, Jesus is a Jew. Jesus was a Jew. He was raised in a Jewish family. And so we need to remember the importance that is that the Jews are considered to be God's chosen people. And so we need to remember that they hold a place of honor. But let me start off, and I'm going to be showing you some maps, which basically I'm going to hold up for you, and I'm going to talk to you about what it is like in Israel today. This is modern day Israel. Now here's one of the first maps that I have. It's probably a map, and I'm going to move this out of the way so it won't get in my way as I show you things. It's a larger map, and what I want to do is explain to you where the prominent places are. If you take a trip to Israel, what do you see? Where do you go? These are the prominent places. And so starting at the top here, this all here is Lebanon. The Israeli line goes like right here. On top of that is Lebanon. So you see how closely interconnected they are. This here, where I've got my finger, I'm looking at it from behind, so I'm trying to follow what it is. This is what's called the West Bank. The West Bank Israel owns, but the Arabs claim that they own it. It's land which the Jews possess, and it's very important land because, as I look at it this way, this will be a fun thing to do. Jerusalem is right here. I hope you can see that. This is Jerusalem. It's right on the edge of the West Bank. And Bethlehem is right here. There's only 6 miles difference between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. As a matter of fact, I've taken taxis back and forth to go from one city to the other. Jericho is up here. And if you look at other parts, this is the Negev Desert right here, and this is the Golan Heights. Now, the Golan Heights is important. It's a very high military area. Most tourists and most travelers never get to see it. It's just amazing how much military equipment they have there. I was allowed in. And the reason I was allowed in with a few others is that we had somebody with us who was Israeli military, and he had the right to go wherever he wanted. And so he brought us up there. And you can stand in the Golan Heights and look towards Syria, which is in this area right here. You can look at Syria and you can look at the airports. You know, you can see from where the Golan Heights are, the major airports in Syria. And Syria is going to be a natural enemy of Israel, as are most of the states around Israel. So that's very handy, and that's why it's so militarized. Planes, all kinds of equipment. You're not allowed to take pictures, and most people aren't even allowed up. You can go to Israel, and if they're in conflict with a country, sometimes you can hear the gunfire in the distance. Here is the Lake Kinnereth. the Sea of Galilee, sometimes called Lake Kinnereth, and it joins the Jordan River, and I'm putting my finger down here, and this is the Dead Sea. Now, the Dead Sea is very interesting because the Dead Sea has no tributaries. When water gets there, it has no place to go, so it stays there. Most of it evaporates, but it leaves minerals behind. So it's very important in terms of what it has for minerals. Israel has a lot of natural minerals, and a lot of the Arabic countries would like to destroy Israel, partly to take over the natural resources that it has. It has unestimable natural resources, trillions and trillions of dollars. They have a lot of things there. There are lots of gold, there's oil, there's silver. A lot of people go to Israel in order to buy diamonds. It has a real diamond center, and a lot of them go there to buy gold. If a couple is getting married, sometimes they'll take a honeymoon a little early and go to Israel to buy golden rings or to buy diamond rings. Diamonds are not that expensive there compared to other places, and they have a lot of them. Most of the buildings, by the way, are made out of sandstone, but I am going to show you that a little later. So I want to go ahead and talk. I'll show you a couple more maps here. Let's see, I don't want to miss anything. Haifa is right here. Tel Aviv is right here. There's a terrific airport. And if you go to Israel, you'll land in the Tel Aviv airport. And there it is, right where I say, right next to the Mediterranean Sea. This is all the Mediterranean Sea. This line, from the Sea of Kinnereth down through to the Dead Sea, that's the border between Israel and Jordan. And Jordan's been pretty good about letting people in. I've sometimes flown into Jordan and gone into Israel from Jordan, and that's a pretty common practice. So it's a pretty friendly country. Jordan is. Here, this is the Gaza Strip. You hear about it in the news sometimes, the Gaza Strip, the deserts and so forth. So this gives you an idea of where things are. Israel is a very small country. You can drive from one place to another place, and it's not hard to do that. And it doesn't take it takes a few hours, you know, but it can be done within a day. And it's good. It's narrow even in the northern parts. So let me put this down and show you another map. And I want to get to the riches in Israel. What's all the interest in it anyway? So here's a smaller map. Kinnereth is shaped a little bit like a harp. The Sea of Galilee is a little bit like a harp. This is the Dead Sea. This is the Jordan River between them. I just want to give you another show of that. Here's Jerusalem here. You can stand in Jerusalem, and if you're in the right spot, you can see the Dead Sea. Sometimes you can you can see it. And of course, Bethlehem down here, just 6 miles between them. It's just another view. I've taken several maps so you can get kind of acclimated to it. And Jordan is right here, the country, and this is the border, as I said before, that between Jordan and Israel. It's very interesting. I love the study of maps anyway. And it's very interesting to see what this country is like. This is a little more complicated, but it's also a good map of modern-day Israel, showing the West Bank, which is right in this hatched tag area, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Jordan, the Mediterranean Sea, the Golan Heights, and the Gaza Strip. Those are in the news. Those areas are in the news, so it's good to be able to have a map on hand so you can kind of check it out when news comes. And this whole area here is Jordan. It's a large country. So let me tell you a little bit about the riches of the sea, of the Dead Sea. Now, the Dead Sea has no tributaries. Water comes from the sea of Galilee, and it flows into the Jordan River, and it flows down and it ends up in the Dead Sea, but the Dead Sea has no tributaries. Much of the water evaporates, but of course the minerals don't evaporate. So you have an area about 200 miles that's basically all minerals with the water that has not evaporated. You can walk right into the Dead Sea and draw your legs up and sit in it. You can't sink. You cannot sink you cannot drown in the Dead Sea because the minerals are so thick and there's so much salt there, it just holds you up. I've seen pictures of people sitting down in the sea reading newspapers, just flipping the newspapers and reading them, and they're in a seated position and they're supported by all the minerals. There's water surrounding them because there is a lot of water there, but they can't sink. The minerals are so thick. A lot of people go there for health reasons, and when they go there for health reasons, they bathe in the Dead Sea. Of course, by the time they get out, they're covered with salt. So they have to shower and take the salt off, but they feel that it's good for their arthritis, for their back problems, and of course people go there, tourists go there all the time, but some people make pilgrimages there just for health reasons to go into the Dead Sea. Now, so people can walk into it, and they can lay on it, and they can sit in it. Now, the Dead Sea, just to get some information here, it's 48 miles long, it's 11 miles wide, and it's about 1,300 feet deep. And the water is bitter, and it's oily to the touch, but simply because of the minerals that is in it. People can't sink in it. Fish can't swim in it, so you're not going to find any life. You'd never go fishing in it. People go to Israel for gold, for diamonds, and other natural resources. Some people go to Israel to bird watch. There are tons and tons and tons of birds. I never paid that much attention to it until I started reading about it. And then when on one of my trips, I saw a tree, and it's just loaded with birds and bird watchers, and the birds are singing away, chattering away, and it's like a great resource. Do you know also, and I don't want to bring this up, that Israel sends fruit all over the world. Its climate is such that it can raise fruit. It's a little bit like the climate of Southern California. It's very warm, and so they do have a fruit that they actually export to countries that can't grow their own fruit. We're fortunate here because we can have fruit that's grown in this country, but a lot of countries like Scandinavian countries, other countries just don't have the climate to be able to grow their own fruit. So Israel sends it to them, and there's a big export business. So it is a very busy, 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 busy country. A lot of things going on, a lot of natural resources. Everybody, by the way, when they graduate from high school, joins the Army, both men and women, and they're in the Army for a year. And then they can get out of the Army, but they have to spend that year in the Army or some kind of military service. And then after that year is up, they can go on their way and do something else. Some people make a career of it, some don't. But I can remember going through customs in Israel and being stopped by young girls, probably girls that had just graduated from high school, checking our luggage, making sure that, we could go through the customs without any problems. And they were young. And they were all in uniform, all in military uniform. It is quite a thing to go to another country and see how they live and see what they expect their people to do and see how they manage. Israel is very busy, very modern. And I want to mention this because I'm going to be talking about Jerusalem, and I'm going to be showing you pictures of Jerusalem. There are two cities of Jerusalem, an old city and a new city, and we're going to be talking about both. Now, here's the wealth of the Dead Sea. there is a monetary value which is so high I can't even pronounce the numbers that it's just terribly expensive, just terribly rich. And 1,270, followed by 3 sets of 3 zeros as an estimate of how much wealth is in the Dead Sea. Now 6.5 tons of water flow into the Dead Sea daily. You would think that was a lot, wouldn't you? 6.5 tons. But evaporation takes most of it out. And 25% of the solid substances include minerals that are very important to any modern country. For example, magnesium, sodium, calcium, potassium, potash. There's enough potash for the entire world's needs for over 2,000 years. The entire world's needs, not just Israel's needs. And it's used for fertilizer, and it's used for explosives as well. So it has all kinds of minerals. And there is, I don't know if we have it, Rick, but Genesis 2:11 and 12, if you have it, if you don't worry about it, I can just read it off. But there is a verse, Genesis 2:11 and 12, where it says, the gold of that land is good, and there is bdellium and onyx stone. There you go. The gold of that land is good, and there is bdellium and onyx stone. It's going on through the different kinds of natural stones that it has. And the other one is Ezekiel 38:13, if we have that. Ezekiel 38:13. And what it says, I'm only reading you part of the verse. It says, to carry away silver and gold. And what it's talking about, I didn't put the whole verse in, but what it's talking is about enemies going into Israel to carry away silver and gold. And of course there's oil and there's everything else there as well. Now, I'm going to show you another map, and it'll show Israel, and it will show all the countries around Israel. Good. You see that little spot right here, right in the middle, that little yellow spot? That's Israel. All of the other countries around her, Turkey is above her, and then Russia is right here. You have Jordan right here. It's kind of hard for me to read it backwards. Saudi Arabia, you have Iraq, Iran, Egypt is right here. This is Northern Africa down here, and it goes on. There are a lot of countries. I'm just going to read them off because I can't point at them exactly, reading it from behind. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, let me see, Jordan, the Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Bulgaria, the Russia, and so forth, all of those, they're all Arabic countries. And they all hate Israel, and their one goal is to get rid of Israel and then take the resources and get rid of the Jewish nation. It's a part of the religion, of their religion, that they do not want Israel to exist. So my purpose in showing you this map is to see how this country, Israel, is so tiny, and yet it's surrounded by huge countries right around it, and all of them are enemies, almost all of them. We are probably the best allies of Israel, but I'm nervous about Israel, about turning away from Israel and not supporting her, as we should be doing that. And if you see, I don't know if you can see this little dot up here, it's Moscow. Russia is right here, and Moscow is right here. You can draw a straight line from Moscow to Jerusalem. There is a verse in the Bible, we will be getting to it, not in this segment, but we will be getting to it, talking about going and Israel being attacked by a country in the far north. Most scholars believe that that's Russia. Russia and other nations, Asian nations, joining in, including China, and having a last-ditch effort to destroy Israel, and then going after Israel, and that Moscow, Russia, will be the head of that, and they will try to destroy Israel, maybe for the natural wealth that it has, and also for religious reasons, which is what I'm going to get into next. What happened between the Israelis and the Jewish people, and also the Arabs? What happened in history that they are so against each other? It's important to know it, and I can describe it simply to you. So I think what I'll do, let me show you one more map, just to give you an impression of the comparison in sizes. And then starting on the next session, I'm going to go into the political history. It's not going to be hard to understand. I'm just going to tell you the story of how the animosity between the Arabs and the Jews got started. Now here's a map. Europe, Asia, and India, and there's a little yellow spot to the left. I hope you can see that. See, it would be right where my finger is. That's Israel, and all of the other nations surround her in the Asian area, and in India, and Moscow, Russia, and the other Arabic countries. And here again, I show this map because I want you to see a comparison of the size of Israel with all of the nations that are around her that are natural enemies. You know, they've had a big fight over the years just to stay alive, but God has always protected them. So here you have India, here you have Russia. I'm trying to read this from behind. You know, it's not the easiest thing to do. Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, all of those Arabic countries are around them. So I'm going to close it here, and next time I'm going to start on the political history of Israel, just to have you understand what the problem is, and we'll talk. So we'll do that next time. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.